everybody, and welcome. We are Kritfayle. I am Emily, and I am joined by two others. Please introduce yourselves.
I am Piper, sometimes Ghost.
Okay. In character, I see.
I was James, and I'm Special Patrol Ghost.
Excellent. And we are here to talk about the game Broken Tales, which is by the World Anvil Publishing and uses the Monad ecosystem. We have played, I can't even think of how many scenarios now, a few, but we realized we had never sat down and had a discussion about what we think of the game, what it's like to play, and we thought that we would like to do that. So, basic introduction to the game. It is a dark fairy tale inspired setting. It is set in the 1700s in Europe, and the players are all hunters who are individuals with special abilities that have been tasked by the church, more specifically, a sort of sect of the church called the Order, to protect people from, to learn more about, to contain, to eradicate. Whatever it is, they are interacting with what are called broken tales, which are stories that everyone may be familiar with, characters from those, but with a bit of a twist. You already actually both mentioned who you were playing. Do you want to elaborate on your hunters at all?
I can't quite remember now why I chose Piper. I do believe I took him from the Quick Start. We did do the Quick Start, correct?
So the first time we played this, we did the quick start, and how it worked was basically there were fewer characters to choose from. When you're playing the full game, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, it also does provide pre-gen characters, but the quick start, I think there were only 4 or 5 that you could choose from. That sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I homed in on Piper and then I never changed. I just sort of found him and went, all right, like I think I know what motivates him, and I stayed with him.
Okay.
But yeah, he's a version of the Pied Piper of Hamlin, although I guess it doesn't actually matter if you don't really know where they come from, as in the historical context or the historical side of the actual hunters. They're not all. Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, I've got multiple thoughts on the same thing. Because not many, if any of them, are actually connected. Because I don't know the fairy tales that well. Some I sort of know, but not really what they're truly based on. And I sort of was under the belief that nearly all fairy tales were completely separate. There was not really a shared universe for any of them. They're all their own sort of folk tales and stuff like that. Whereas this has put them all in one in one setting. But I didn't need to know the actual Pied Piper like story. A lot of that doesn't actually matter in the stories we tell. And there's things that are different, like he has a rather over-dramatic mouse, which is called Hamlin. So I guess they've worked some of that into the new version.
He has a mouse in the pre-gen. You're the one that made him over dramatic.
Hamlin is as Hamlin does. There's no controlling
Ah.
that creature.
So one thing definitely to, I suppose, make note of, all the player characters in the game are technically the villains of their stories. So one of the things about Broken Tales is in sort of the establishing lore of the game, there was a wish made by a child to turn all the villains good, but in so doing, it made the heroes of the fairy tales evil. So there's sort of been a swap of sorts there. The player characters are all technically villains, not within the game. Within the game, they are the heroes, but traditionally they would be the villains, and the people that you will run into trying to get in your way very often would classically be the heroes of their stories.
Which gave it a very nice twist. I also feel that this particular... Well, actually, I'm starting to feel this a bit about a lot of the games that we sort of played, obviously not all of them, because we do have Transformers and stuff like that in our list, but a lot of the ones that really stand out are European games.
Mm.
And I think or Scandinavian as well, shouldn't just say European, but European, Scandinavian, or that sort of general large area of the world. But I sort of feel that a lot of those games would never get made over here, like US, Canada kind of. Not sensibilities, but the way they approach games seems to be very different with what they think is important to the game. And it's led to some interesting things. Like, I don't think Broken Tales would have got made by any of the major companies over here. Yeah, I just can't see them doing it. But it's such a clever game. It's like they just put whatever they thought would make it good in there. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'm very impressed with like their dedication to what like the focus of it, the fact that you are a segment of the Catholic Church.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, they really just went, this is our story. We're not saying it's reality. We're not making any statement about anything, in reality. But this would be a good story, wouldn't it? And yeah, I think that's led to a very interesting setting.
The hunters, and definitely at least the ones we have in our game, are all pre-gen characters. Now, there is the option to create your own hunter for Broken Tales, and the book does give you details on how to do that, suggestions, kind of tells you what you'd need to do. Now, they do say if you're making your own character, it's not technically making your own character. You would still be choosing a character from a fairy tale, a fable, a story, just one that they have not already put into the game, and they
Right.
give you a way to sort of, I suppose, convert that character into a playable hunter. Now, nobody in our game actually did that. Everybody went with a pre-generated character. And how did you find that that went in terms of playing? I know we've had some other games before, like Alien, where we've used pre-gens, and everyone's had thoughts kind of on how that went for the game. So, how do you like the pre-gens for Broken Tales?
I think they were really good, though I wish they were a little bit morally gray because I feel like it works better because they're still the villain, and it's a much darker world.
It definitely is.
But I think they were very good for pre-gens.
Uh huh.
Pre-gens are the unloved children of the RPG world, really. I don't know many people that really want them. But the thing that's interesting for me is the more I have seen people play pre-gens, the better they play. And I know a lot of people don't like that admission, but it's true, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I think we didn't love the idea so much going into Alien, but then found that it actually was really helpful in
Right.
terms of
Right.
playing, how that game went. Now, to be fair, the way Broken Tales is meant to be, or perhaps suggested to be, you can play as people in our game have done, the same character throughout. I believe people more often kind of swap back and forth between different hunters. In some cases, even choosing particular hunters they think will suit a particular scenario very well. That isn't normally how we tend to play things because people will get more attached to their characters, want to keep that character story going. So we haven't done that so much, but that is definitely something a lot of people do, and the option is there to play different characters.
Like, I understand the love people have of making their own character, but I think the problem is a lot of people make characters on the fly. You turn up
Mhm.
and you make your character. There's either more of a connection to the statistics and abilities than there is to who the character is, or they don't yet know who the character is. And a lot of the time, the pre-gens in something like Broken Tales and especially Alien, and with the agendas, there's sort of a multi-level effect that's going on with like the alien characters. You have a really good idea of who that character is, and that might help when it comes to the actual playing of it. To a degree, that was here as well. But yes, I remember you saying the idea was often you could swap hunters, but once we sort of went, no, I actually like, and I know who I am now. I didn't want to change, and SPG didn't change.
Yeah.
I agree with him in that, like he said, that about it being morally grey. I think we've still done that ourselves. I think we have made it morally grey. We've definitely tried to be the good guys, I think, but it's certainly not to use a D&D alignment, we are definitely not lawful good. We are following our own brand of law and our own brand of justice, which makes the game interesting as well. Because with that can come positives in that we can solve problems as we see fit outside of what would normally be done, but we could also not so much overstep our authority, but we could certainly overstep our morality in the solving of certain problems. And I think there's good story in both. Knowing what your character would do, I think, is a very important part of Broken Tales because it
Mm.
doesn't rely on the abilities like D&D does. It's not that sort of game. There's no levels. You don't keep getting more and more powerful in the way a first level character can become a 20th level character. There's no connection between your first level character and a 20th level character in its abilities. It's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
That's not how Broken Tales does things. That quest to improve is not the center of the character like it is in a lot of level games.
No, the leveling up is definitely different in Broken Tales, and I I think that's one downside to the way we've been playing it more, which is not so much swapping between the hunters. You do get to a point wherein there's not so much more leveling up you can do
Right.
because the experience you earn, you can buy certain sort of upgrades for your character, whether that's more wounds, like the health, more soma, so on and so forth. But there's a limit to the number of times you can get each thing. We haven't quite hit the the end there. We're not quite at the point where it's like, well, what could I do to improve this character anymore? But definitely that is something that would be less of a problem if you were changing characters.
Yeah, I don't know how SPG feels about it. I have mixed feelings on it because what I love about the game and what I love about most games that we play is that it's not about the abilities and statistics and that. I mean, you can't do D&D any other way. That's fine. It's not a slam against D&D. It's you can't progress if you in the way that it wants you to and in the way the adventures are designed if you weren't having that leveling built into it. But I like, just on a personal level, a lot of the games that don't do it that way, just that's just a personal thing. But it did feel that the progression cap of any sort in Broken Tales is reached pretty early. Now I don't know the solution to that because the idea in Broken Tales isn't to become this massively powerful creature because much like Star Trek, in a way, Star Trek shares this as well. Your character in Star Trek is capable. You're not weak becoming powerful like a level based character. You're not like first level and then by sixth you're like pretty decent. You're starting to definitely get into your middle sort of quality. It doesn't do that. You're a Starfleet officer. You're trained. You're good. So you don't progress in that way now because you're already good. And Broken Tales is like that. We are well above your average human. There's really not much we can't do in our respective fields. We're all different, but an average mortal is not going to be any threat to Piper, really. So you're already a superhero in a way. So where do you go with that? But at the same time, it does feel like there's not really any areas after a very short period of time that you could add something to the character. And I don't know what it would be though, because obviously you are capable.
Yeah, I do think to a certain extent that makes sense mechanically because unlike D&D, uh, this game is very unlike D&D, I suppose. But unlike D&D, the scenarios don't have anything like a recommended level or it's not like you need to be stronger than you begin to play this scenario or that you could do them in any order you want and you could switch to a new character who you haven't put any upgrading into at all and still be able to complete any scenario. So, I can see why technically you wouldn't even ever really need to do any of that. It would make things slightly more convenient, but yes, we can also look into seeing what else we can add, but I would say the main thing you're getting throughout playing is you're adding to the character's story more than the
Right.
character's stats.
And I realized I was doing something that's considered an add-on, or at least what you can spend experience points on. I was already doing is just part of what I thought he would do. You can influence another hunter or something, and I was doing that with Iskra.
That would be I think what you're thinking of, you can take on like an apprentice hunter, and if you do that, you'd be playing her, not me.
But he was sort of, from a story point of view, he'd sort of adopted her as a semi-apprentice.
And now she's got a dog. That's a recent thing that I
I, I don't
remember.
I don't know if he'd do that now, or if that was more because it was the first story we did that he felt
Huh.
responsible. Or
I suppose now we will never know.
we certainly have done a lot of recruiting. I don't know if that's I know it's obviously part of the game because recruitment was available, but I don't know if that's really been, if we've done it more than they envisioned, or if we've approached solutions and to problems in a way that they didn't really think.
Some might also think I've been rather lenient in terms of letting people be talked down, but I don't know.
I'm quite proud of some of the comments my character has received from the Broken Tales community, so I'm quite happy with that.
Now, it came up a little bit before, but the setting of the game, I mentioned at the beginning, it is a dark fairy tale inspired. I suppose it would be more correct to say it's just a classic fairy tale inspired game. So I would definitely be the person involved that I don't think it's unfair to say I know the most about fairy tales going into this. So I at least was not surprised by the tone at all because that is very much traditional fairy tale, the Brothers Grimm, it's Christian Andersen to a certain extent too, but those generally aren't as dark. How did other people find the tone? Was it what you expected or not so much?
The good example is at the start, the first adventure we
Yep.
did. I didn't expect that to be the actual thing. She, well, not killed, but she sent her daughter out into the forest to become noble, like nobility.
Yes, spoilers for Broken Tales Quick Start if you've not played it yet, but people were a little surprised that the mother in that adventure deliberately tried to get her daughter killed, if not kill her personally. Uh, that is perhaps on the lighter side of the scenarios that came later, so yes,
It was a lot darker than I expected, but I think it was very good. I think they do it well. None of it feels like unnecessary to the story.
that is good.
That's the thing, and that's coming back to what I was saying about it. It wouldn't be made over here. I think that if it was, it would be more lighter, possibly closer to the Disney style fairy tales that we're more familiar with. And I'm saying generalization. Obviously, different people know, like you said, the Brothers Grimm and that.
What, we didn't all as children read the version of Cinderella where the stepsisters chop bits of their feet off?
Right.
Are you sure? Huh.
But that's the thing. So I think that that's more accepted. Like that sort of grim, darker view is that more European, Scandinavian view of games. They're not afraid to take some risks. I think they're risk aversion. It's a very different approach. It doesn't feel as business orientated as it does here, and I think that that's really, really good. There's certain companies over here that I could just picture a multiple meetings taking out all sorts of stuff until it became a completely different game. It's all risk aversion management, and that doesn't seem to be part of a lot of these sort of games. And I think it really shows, and it's good, and it's surprising because I didn't think that was the storyline either at the start, because that seemed very dark, and that's not usually what RPGs do. It was a bit of an adjustment, but it's a good one because it gave us, I think for us too, when we realized how dark some of the storylines were going to be, we started to look where we could add some light. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that, where none of it's happening. There's no real humor in anything that's serious. When something's been particularly dark, the light we've looked for, we've tried to find solutions that had a more positive outcome. But there's times the scenario, the characters, the NPCs, you can't always get that perfect solution that high fantasy sometimes sort of has, which makes it interesting for sure. I don't know if groups would like to play it all the time. I mean, we have, but we've also, I think, but Emily will know more than the rest of us, but we may have adjusted the game in the way the characters have been playing it to make it a little bit lighter than envisioned.
I would say perhaps now the scenarios do leave it very open-ended often to let you really decide sort of through your actions what kind of ending you will get. I would say perhaps we have I don't know that we've ever had what people would call a truly happy ending, but I would say a lot of ours have been happier than they could have been.
I think each group was probably the happiest for me, I think, even though really we'd be dealing with a child with terrible trauma. I think the outcome of that has been trying to give her a better life, give her something to be involved in. But I think the way her mother did things and that in that particular story, that she would have had a lot of trauma as a child, which I also think led to how we approach trying to resolve that particular problem.
It is good in I mean, I know not everyone likes to do darker, more serious games, but for anyone looking to kind of I don't really mean practice, I don't know, but if you want to get more into that, it does provide a lot of opportunities to try and role play having to handle more serious topics, which is definitely interesting. We don't play it every day, so I again, I may be biased. I really like the game, but I certainly have never found that playing it as regularly as we have when we've been playing it has felt upsetting or that it's too dark or anything like that. I can't speak for anyone else though.
No, but I think that's what I mean. I think we tried to find those bits of light in the setting or the characters, so that that didn't happen. But I can see where it could if you stayed 100% sometimes to, let's say, the Brothers Grimm ideal, which isn't necessarily saying that's what Broken Tales is. It's definitely part of it, but I'm not saying that that level of depression is the core mechanic of the game, where it sometimes seems to be in some of the fairy tales. But if you did it like that, maybe you could find it a little bit grim to want to do it a lot rather than as a what Ken calls a palate cleanser. We've played a lot of this type of game. Doing this one's really good for something different and to get you to act differently. But I think that's why we added some of the lightness where we could. I made Piper very theatrical. He's still theatrical even when he's serious, but it's a different theatrical.
Mm.
But that's his coping mechanism. He also, his drive is story. He loves story. So he sees story in items. He sees story in people. He does not like it when stories are cut short that he's interested in, i.e., people being murdered that he thought that they had something to contribute. He will be the first to acknowledge that he is the one that chooses in his own way what constitutes the story. His form of justice is not necessarily the same as the law. But yeah, I think we've added some sort of like he tries to annoy Brother Felix somewhat.
Who is a character only in our game. So if you've played it and don't know who that is, don't worry.
Certainly, he enjoys flustering the nuns. especially indirectly. He likes his partner in crime there, Iskra. But I think those things and having Hamlin, I have a feeling Hamlin's a lot more intelligent than the game possibly envisioned. But as the magic is a part of it, I thought I could get away with it. But yeah, I think we sort of added the light in those areas. I don't know what SPG does on the side of how grim it can be.
I've tried to play James very fair. From how it's written, it's written as he is more good, but I like it more grim. But I also prefer to be fair. I see him as seeing statistically, like have your goods outweighed your bad.
Okay. Now, talking about the stories, I guess I've been saying fairy tales. It's not exclusively fairy tales to some extent. We did have Alice in Wonderland, which
Yes.
not classically a fairy tale. Were there any stories that you were surprised that have come up so far, or ones you have never heard of, as happened a couple times?
Ziggy Star Piggy was a fun one. That I was a bit, what the hell is this?
The Three Little Pigs one, or
Yeah, was it the three little piggy in the wall?
the one with the mine and
Yeah,
those Three Little
yeah,
Yeah,
Pigs.
yeah. That was a bit of
I had no idea what was going on there.
Certainly an interesting one. I think people weren't really familiar with the steadfast tin soldier necessarily.
yeah.
Yeah,
Matchstick Girl. I didn't know the actual story, but
Little Match Girl.
it
Yep.
was a very interesting adventure. That one.
The actual story is quite different from quite different from that. Yeah, I find it really interesting. I just seeing how the story changes from the original to the scenario. A lot of times it's not even close to like a direct retelling of it. It's taking themes or inspiration from and then doing something completely different with it, which is very interesting.
Well, I think that's probably better.
Yes.
I can't think of the example now, but there was a game that mirrored something. I know this is ridiculous because I can't remember it. But basically, it followed what it was based on very closely, and so the upside was you got to play in that setting, in that which was great. The downside was you were essentially playing that which had already been done, which meant that really your decisions weren't so much made for you, but you just sort of followed it. So the good thing with this is that it's not that, and I think that that's really good because you don't fall into that trap of, well, what is the story of the three little pigs? You know what I mean? And so you don't make decisions based
Yes.
on that. You have to just go where the story's taking you. So I think it's good that they didn't just go like there's no real wolf in the three little pigs and no houses are getting blown down in that, like the Disney sense. So that's good. You're not looking for that. So you're playing the story for the story. So I think it's a much better way than trying to base it too close on either the original or any sort of retelling of those fairy tales.
That can also make it even better. I mean, even for a story you are familiar with, knowing that it's not going to be exactly the same doesn't it does mean you're not always looking out for the next thing, the next plot point you're familiar with. But to a certain extent, the ones based on stories that people aren't as familiar with then are even better because you don't even know what the story would be to try and look out for things from it.
Right,
So,
right. That's
yes.
exactly. It is interesting how they've tied the hunters, both the ones you play as well as initially some that you don't, as in like every adventure surrounds a hunter who's not yet part of the order. Is that correct?
That was basically done by the first expansion. So the core book, it just gives you some hunters that are playable, and then the ones from the scenarios were not. The first expansion took a lot of characters from scenarios in the core book and made them playable. So for example, the quick start, the first one we did, Iskra, which is based on Little Red Riding Hood. Iskra is a playable hunter as of the first supplement, basically. So depending on if you are playing both of those and you want to stick to the canon of your own campaign, depending on how everything went with Iskra when you played that one, she could then show up as of the first supplement.
But there's some that are interesting that I don't know how they're going to play into it. I mean, obviously you must, but
That's optimistic.
well, there's the Japanese hunter, which I'm assuming is from a Japanese fairy tale that would just normally be in Japan, and we're the 1700s Europe.
I do not as of yet have a scenario. So I there is the one that I backed the Kickstarter of. We don't have those yet, but currently that hunter does not have their own scenario.
Because everything so far has been around Europe, been around that area that we sort of
Mhm.
play. So the idea of having the Japanese one is very interesting, but I don't know how that would fit
I
in.
wonder,
But
yeah, I'm not sure if it would because even you've got I don't want to say too much because the players don't know much about her yet, but Sherazade is not originally European, but she's there now.
hmm.
So it's possible they'd do something similar. They've come to Europe for some reason. I don't know if you'd travel further. It is definitely possible, but as of yet, you've mostly just been going around Europe, and we've been ignoring how long it would actually take you to get anywhere because
Yeah, not
we
important.
don't have time for that. Yes. So something else, something I really appreciate about this game, and this could just be me being lazy as a GM, but the system, the Monad ecosystem is very streamlined, very kind of intuitive, very easy to get into and play. Not too mechanical, not like super complex in that sense. And I really appreciate that about it. But how have people found that is from the player side?
I like it, but sometimes it can be very hard without the restriction.
Mm.
Because I'm like how it says I'm the best at what I do in that. What does that really entail? What exactly is the best at?
So there's definitely some ways in which things are, I guess, open to interpretation. For that bit of your character, I'd say probably you're the best at dueling and being a pirate captain. I don't know. Best at having a large creature that wants to eat you. Yes, definitely there are ways in which I can see certain things being more defined would make it easier in a sense, but instead it is often left very open-ended. I do find personally I appreciate from a prep side as well. There aren't a lot of there's not too many stats or things I need to be keeping track of from that end. I like that you can focus more on the story than kind of trying to set up combat when preparing. But yes, I definitely agree that some things could maybe be a little more defined.
Yeah, I like rules light systems, just in general, and that's just preference. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I don't think D&D would work rules light.
Mm.
So that so you it doesn't apply to everything, but I definitely just as a player and GM generally, with the way we do things, it works well with how we do things. I like the rule light systems. It lets us just play more character than abilities, which is seems to be what we like. But
Yeah.
I do agree with SPG. This is extremely rules light, and I think yeah, there's a couple of times even we might get a little bit caught up with thinking, how can we do that? It puts a lot on the GM just to decide, yeah, you can just do that, or no, you can't. When it's maybe the descriptors, it would help if they were a little bit more, maybe just a little bit more. It sort of seems to be a view from the actual character to a degree, which I can completely understand, but that might lead itself also into some of the other issues, like SPG saying I'm the best at what I do. What does that mean? I think Baba Yaga's was I'm the most powerful wizard, or
I
I'm
think
a.
that's just what our Baba Yaga took from that.
But that's what I mean, right? I'm not sure what they if maybe they it would have helped if there was a bit more. description, or if we just took certain things from it, which is could well be what they intend. They might go, well, we made it that way deliberately so that the player has to sort of read into it what they read into it. But I can understand where SPG is coming from.
All right. So we are almost at our time, but I do want to ask everyone because for myself, I can 100%, 110% or higher, perhaps, say I would recommend playing this game. I greatly enjoy it. I have never played it as a player, and I would like to definitely someday. I think that would be enjoyable, but I am definitely enjoying being the storyteller as well. From a player side, would you recommend this game?
Yes, without a doubt.
Excellent.
I'm a sci-fi guy. I've always loved space, nebula, all of the exploration. It's why I love Star Trek. I've always just you give me a sci-fi story, I'm always there. So that's always my first love. So for me, when I like something that's not that, it says to me there's something there that's really interesting, and I quite like Broken Tales, and I quite enjoyed doing it. And we were playing it for a while every week, and I was never not looking forward to it. So I would say, yeah, if you're looking for a hex-based combat game, like D&D and the like, then no, that's not what this is. But if you played a lot of that and you want to do something completely different, even as a palate cleanser, as our Ken would say, I would absolutely recommend giving it a go. And they're a smaller company, and I think it's
Mm.
always good to support smaller companies in their endeavors when you can. And it's a quality book from what I saw. I don't own the book, but from the images and stuff that we have,
The art is amazing. I'm
yeah,
a
it's
huge fan.
it's very clever. It's definitely worth supporting, and I've enjoyed playing it a lot.
Yeah, so if anyone listening does want to check out any more to do with that, it's the World Anvil Publishing that has put this game out. They've got a website. You can take a look at that. There are other games. You can buy the core book. There's expansion. You can buy art prints. It's very cool. There's also a Discord that you can join if you have any questions about this game or any of their other stuff. And if you want to get a sense of how the game plays, we've got some actual play videos on YouTube. You can look us up on Spotify. We'd love if you'd give it a listen, give us some feedback if you like. I can take it, I promise. But yeah, we've greatly enjoyed the game and really recommend it and would love if anyone else would check it out and let us know what they think. Thank you to Ghost and SPG for chatting about the game with me. I really enjoyed having the player's perspective as well because I only have the storyteller perspective, so it's helpful to put that all together. And yeah, give our game a listen. Go to their website, go to their Discord, check it out.